So last time we talked, you said that this new CD is a little bit darker, darker than the last one. Is it?
Um, this whole record is really about how I stole fire from the men in my life. Took me a while to be able to admit that, but it's about stealing passion, not being able to find your own. And each song became a fragment, another piece for me to find that.
Greetings, girls, ladies, babes, and old bags who say she was so pretty. I'm Joey.
I'm Matt.
I'm Kristen.
And this is Messing with the Master, a podcast where three lifelong Tori Amos fans reflect on the iconic singer-songwriter's catalog by thoughtfully and intentionally reorganizing each album into fresh playlists that explore Tori's musical legacy, as well as our own interconnected personal narratives and friendship, which began with a shared passion for Tori's music over 20 years ago. This is our season 1 finale, where we finally enter into the gritty and magical netherworld known as Boys for Pele, Tori's third solo record and her first as the sole producer, which was in 1996 a very big deal, but we'll get to that. While the record truly needs no introduction, it was perhaps the most intoxicating era to be a Tori-phile for a host of reasons, including, but not limited to, the introduction of Tori's beloved harpsichord, which somehow manages to punctuate the tracks it is featured on with anger, sass, sorrow, and joy, as well as slivers of the harmonium, organ, and hidden clavichord. The wealth of singles, EPs, imports, and limited editions that seemingly magically appeared in the record store every month. The haunting and downright dirty album artwork, as well as the sensual, colorful, and evocative music videos that one might have caught on MTV's 120 Minutes at 2 in the morning. And the absolutely epic 190-date Dewdrop In World Tour, which saw Tori at her most unbridled, improvisatory, running the gamut from whispering angel to shrieking siren to growling demon, sometimes within the same song. Boys for Pele debuted at number 2 on the Billboard 100, despite being largely shunned by critics and mainstream radio, and has since rightly earned a reputation as Tori's true masterwork, a Baroque, Gothic feast of experimentation, passion, and pain. There's a sense of wonderment and danger listening to this record, as though we've stumbled upon a jewel box filled with recipes for incantations, or a shack full of boys being guarded by a shotgun-toting redhead on a rocking chair. So join us as we balance cake and bread and say goodbye to the Glitter Girl, aka Season 1. This is Messing with the Master, Boys for Pele. Hi.
That intro was just about as epic as the actual record. And I've got a mysterious netherworld for you right here.
Ew.
Usually that's Kristen's job to get dirty.
That is not true. I'm the biggest prude of all of you idiots.
Well, I'm so excited. We're so excited. We have been, Maddie, do you want to say a few words about why we kept this for last?
Sure. I mean, we're withholding. We get off on withholding. And we know everybody wants it. So we waited until the last possible minute to give it to everybody.
Reminds me of somebody else I know.
As kind of a stunt.
Stunt queens, yep.
I think that we wanted to maybe save the best for last. And, this is arguably, I would say, her best. But I think it's one that within the fan community is really beloved, more so than the others in a lot of ways. And this album also, like, upon re-listening to it we've been listening to it now for a long time, but us in particular, we've been re-listening to it for weeks now and spending even more time with it. You can really tell how distinct it is within the entire catalog. It's a really unusual record to begin with, but for Tori, it's also unusual within the scope of her entire career. There's nothing else like it in general, but there's nothing else like it in the discography either. So there's also a lot to dig into thematically, musically. There's just a lot to unpack with this particular album. So I think we all probably needed to find our sea legs and figure out what our cadence was for this podcast before even attempting to tackle something like this one, because this has a lot of pitfalls if you don't do it right.
Yeah, well said. It's just it's truly like a once in a lifetime, like it's just once in a lifetime for her and for us. Like I think it's why, we'll get into it more, but I think that she, especially, now it's been out 28 years. I think that as Tori gets older, which is wild to think about, but as she gets older, her relationship obviously changes to it. But, it feels like, truly somebody documented, I don't know, the Dark Night of the Soul, like an actual breakdown and breakthrough. Like, it's documented for us on record. And I think that, I don't think embarrassment's the right word. I think she's proud of that work, but I think that Tori, has to sort of acknowledge this elephant in the room with that record and those songs, that she was really, popping a vein, so to speak, and letting us see inside. And it's out there forever. She was breastfeeding a piglet, for God's sakes. It will always be there. It is really her going there and beyond, and almost going so far that she might not return, as to quote Fiona Apple, another piano goddess. That like it's just such a moment in time. It's such a vulnerable thing. I feel like even still to this day, it feels almost like voyeurism to take in this record. Yes. It feels like you are listening in on something you are not supposed to hear.
And I would even add to that, I think one of the exciting things about this record is the process and from which it was made.
The artistry.
Right. Tori really has a process that she, follows in general. But with this one, the process was a little bit more extreme. And after Little Earthquakes and after Under the Pink, which were both critical successes, popular successes, on her third record, she was really able to make a real like left turn, and she had the power to do anything she wanted. And that kind of autonomy, I think for somebody who's, emerging and who's really coming into their own, can be again, I said pitfall, and I'm going to probably say that a lot, but it could have been a huge pitfall.
Yeah.
In a lot of ways it was. But the way she was so open about her experiences using ayahuasca with a shaman to get to where she needed to get to emotionally with this record, I think is a really interesting place to start with analyzing this record, because I think when you put that piece together with the final product, you can sort of understand how she got there. I don't think you can be in a normal state of mind to write, record, and perform this record. And that's that's exciting. That's exciting that she really went there with it.
Yeah, just to add two quick things to that, Maddie. You said that she basically, after the Earthquakes Under the Pink, had the power to kind of do whatever she wanted. And, though it's never been confirmed, it seems like some very high-profile producers wanted to work with her on that album. And she said no. She thumbed a nose at
Glenn
the
Ballard,
guys.
maybe?
Could be. It's very possible. I mean, they wanted her to work with somebody big, and she said, no, I'm going to do this myself. And though the record is such a treasure, she paid dearly for that decision. It really, there was no coming back from her relationship to the Suits at Atlantic Records after she did that. And of course, the album went platinum. And this is a time when a platinum record meant something, right? Like really meant something for you to sell an actual 1 million copies of an album. And she, had her own tour, and she didn't, need anybody's support. She just went out there on her own with Steve Caton on guitar, and really just worked. She worked and just wanted to prove them wrong. And I think obviously was sustained by the just rabid fans who were so immersed. But we also, need to admit too that she probably lost a lot of fans from the first two records of Boys for Pele, because it was so divisive and so strange and so uncomfortable. Like, it was hard to listen to. We'll get to our first experiences with it, but it is a tricky listen the first time. It is jarring. It is uncomfortable, scary, all those things. It's all those things at once. It feels like, what is this? Like, yes, this is music, but is this music? Like, it's so it's so unlike anything by anybody ever, and I think to this day nobody has made anything that even sort of approaches it. It's so sui generis, it's so unique and of its own, like its own stratosphere.
And it's a go for broke moment, right?
Oh yes.
It's a full investment in this era, which I think is really fascinating. She knew what she had to do to make it work, and that included a grueling tour. That tour must have been really tough. It was long. It was intense. They
Early
had
shows, late shows.
Early 2 shows a night.
I can't even
Can you
believe that she did
imagine?
that. I wish I could have seen a late show and early show.
Like 20 shows of early shows and late shows.
Wild.
Yeah. So this was like the full investment. And I think what you said, Joey, is interesting in that maybe she did lose some listeners between Pink and Pele, but I think we've said this before. She may lose listeners from album to album just because her albums are so varied in style, and you're never going to get Little Earthquakes again. You're never going to get Under the Pink again. You're never going to get Pele again. And that's okay. It's interesting. What we're interested in here is seeing the documentation of that artistic progress and that growth and that voice and how it changes over the years, or at least I am. I shouldn't speak for everyone, but that's, I think, for me, the most interesting thing about being so immersed in this music and in her worlds that she creates, the sonic cathedrals that she creates, rather. So I think it's, interesting because the record was really so divisive that maybe it did lose fans, but I think it did also. It was so divisive that it actually rallied the fans too to really defend Tori. And I think this is an era where everybody was sort of radicalized for Tori to really defend her, because she may have needed it at that time, because the critics were not kind to this record, which in retrospect, it's understandable because all of the critics working at the time were men. And this is not a record for heterosexual men, as far as I'm concerned. It must be really tough to approach it, especially if you're a music critic who's used to, Nirvana and grunge and all of the things that were really popular at that time. Imagine being a heterosexual male music critic, if you can, for a minute, and just think about listening to a song like Hey Jupiter, which is vulnerable and tender. Blood Roses. I
Professional Widow.
All of it.
Yeah.
It makes sense that in retrospect, people had a really strong, not positive reaction to this album. And we'll talk about the Rolling Stone review in a little bit.
Oh, yes.
But, to me, even reading that, it was almost like from 1996 to probably 2001, maybe 2002, Tori was living down putting out Boys for Pele. And every album review, every mention was always referring back to either Pele as some sort of grand disaster, some sort of ego-driven vanity project. I mean, people were very, very unkind to this record.
Even the 4-star Choir Girl review in Rolling Stone sort of felt almost coming off of the misogyny and the misunderstanding of Boys for Pele in that review, even though it's different people reviewing it, it feels almost like, okay, she finally did something listenable. You know what I mean? It feels so patronizing, so condescending. It's the
shade of it all. The shade of it all. I
truly.
hate it.
The double standards are infuriating to me, because when I think, and I think you said it totally right, but when you think about these reviewers and they're looking at something like Nirvana and like just grunge generally, it's Tori's version of grunge, it's like the Baroque element, and some of those like purposeful off-key changes are meant to be unsettling, and it's like, why are men allowed to be unsettling and women aren't? And it's like supposed to be this time of like, female like lips, hips, tits, power, whatever the fucking magazine said, but it's like only in a way that we're comfortable with. And I think that, I think now a lot of us that have been fans for so long, I think all of us were I think we were all receptive to, even if it was a tough listen, we were receptive and willing to go on her path with her and enjoy the album. But I think that, there was a lot of backlash at that time, and she did lose listeners, and a lot of people hated the album. And so it's interesting to me about the romanticization of Tori over time, and how, I think a lot of us consider it her best album, or one of her best, one of the Holy Trinity, blah, blah, blah. But at the time, people did not like the album. Did not. A lot of people did not. Some people did. It was a real polarization. For sure.
I think you bring up a good point too, just the disparity of, when the men of this era, Trent Reznor, who we'll talk about probably later when we get into testing, and, all of the grunge guys, they're all out there swinging their dicks around. But the second a woman brings her big dick energy to the table, nobody wants to hear about that. Nobody wants to welcome that into their lives. It's very threatening. That power and that energy, and make no mistake, that is what Tori is bringing on this record. She's meeting these men, these rock stars, where they're at, and she's doing a riff, a variation on what they're doing, filtered through her own sort of like trippy psychedelic filter, her trippy psychedelic Tori filter.
She's referred to it as her punk harpsichord record in recent years, which is interesting because the harpsichord's only on a few songs, so it's interesting that it sort of becomes defined. But I also think she means the tour, the era, right, where she had the harpsichord with her and was, reimagining some songs on it and covering some songs on the harpsichord. And the harpsichord, this just ridiculous instrument to put on a record in 1996, a pop record, like an alternative rock album, didn't quite make sense. And it was so unusual and surprising. It also kind of spoiled us and made us expect different keyboards on every record. And she delivered that for the most part for a few years. But I think that's something that I very unfairly always in my head, I'm like, I can't wait to see if she brings in another keyboard, something unexpected, because she did that with, and we forget, but I mentioned the harmonium, I mentioned the clavichord. They're sort of underneath the surface as well. She has all these layers of sound that are really kind of amazing. And she brought the harmonium on tour with her as well for Widow and Hey Jupiter, and she did Sister Janet and a few other random songs on it, which was so exciting when she would randomly do something. I just want to go back really quickly before I forget, because there's so much to say about this. But also the thing that's also a double standard, and this is not at all intended, to pit PJ Harvey and Bjork against her. But if we're talking about sort of it feels almost as PJ Harvey and Bjork always got a critical pass and were sort of celebrated for doing something, but there was just something against Tori that she was not. I don't know. I feel like she was excluded from that critical acclaim that they got over and over and over again. And they're all very, very different. But I always wondered, what is it about Tori that, and I think that it might be what you said, that there's something so decidedly feminine about her, and feminist and female, and so unapologetically so, that I wonder if that's it. Just this really in your face, and she was talking about patriarchy and religion and, any interview from those 90s, the 90s are just so, maddening and bewildering. And I think she was just sort of making people insecure about themselves. It didn't feel right to like or enjoy her music or something. I don't know.
I think two things. I that's a really fair point to raise, because Bjork and PJ took all of the kudos, right?
They were her contemporaries, so we have to,
critical darlings. And I would say two things based on what you just said. I think that Tori talking about religion in an authoritative and competent and complex way freaked a lot of people out. And I think that she's also American. So Bjork and PJ are
there we
American.
Go. Yeah, that's right.
So I think that people may have felt a little bit more comfortable to, give kudos to these women from, a little elfin magical woman from Iceland, and PJ from the White Cliffs of Dover, all that bullshit. And Tori's, the girl next door. And I think there may have been a little bit of a misperception about who Tori was. And I do think the way that she confronted the religious element of this album and the way that she spoke about it was way above everybody's heads. At the time, it was above mine. And I can't imagine having to engage it on a critical level while discussing this record. And I think that probably put a lot of people off. And that's no judgment on her whatsoever, because I'm now looking back at that, I think it's really exciting that she was able to do that. I mean, on such a scale too, with the full support of a record company talking about some
Sort of.
some really wacky shit. Let's not mince words, like that's some really out there stuff to be talking about when you're promoting a pop record, essentially, and that's why, we've argued about this on our text chain. Not really argued, but I don't think this album could be made today. I don't think there's anybody that could make this album today and say those things today. There's not an audience for it now like there was in 1996.
I think there's a lot of reasons for the double standard. I think that there was a space that the industry was willing to give willing to give women. Maybe, maybe it's like 10% of the market share. Mm-hmm. And so then what people respond to is what is going to become the thing that we rally around, and we want more of that. And I love PJ Harvey. I love Bjork. I know y'all are really big y'all are bigger PJ Harvey fans than me. I do like PJ Harvey, and I don't. It's not meant to pit them against each other. But if you put these women of this time in a group, all beyond those three, more of them, I think where Tori really excels is her writing, her lyrics,
right?
And I think that the stuff she says makes people uncomfortable. It's not even just about the subject matter, about sex and religion. It's how she says it. It makes them uncomfortable. It's the delivery, the wording she uses. I think even some of like the words that she rhymes that aren't maybe typically like, she makes them rhyme, she makes them fit. I think people it just scrambles their brain a little bit. So either you're willing to be on that path and follow that with her, or you're just like, I don't quite know what to do with it. Again, like we all like kind of being unsettled and uncomfortable. We love other things in music too, but like we're, like Maddie, when you and I are watching her together and we're like, ooh, we like it. We like those moments. I don't see those moments in those other artists who I love. I'm very rarely watching somebody where I'm like, oh, damn. And with her, it is in every live song, every performance, even album delivery. I think it's that. I think it's the lyrics.
I think that's an interesting thing to think about. And my immediate thought when it comes to that, and again, I didn't really know that we were going to be doing all of these comparisons with Bjork and PJ today, but it does make sense because of their contemporary nature. I think you may see a little bit of that with Bjork too, based on solely the way she sounds. Her singing voice, I think, does also rub people the wrong way. And I think that's in a similar way to the way Tori sometimes rubs people the wrong way with her language, with her delivery. That's a really interesting point to bring up. I hadn't thought about that.
But I also think, I'm totally in agreement with everything that you all just said. I think that with Bjork, though, I think, and maybe with PJ Harvey too, I think that they, and this ties back to the lyrical stuff, Tori is so confessional, even when she's being sort of inscrutable. That it's something really personal. It goes back to that voyeuristic, like, should I be, it's kind of like walking, it's kind of like walking in on somebody masturbating, basically. Like, you feel like, I'm not supposed to be looking at this, but like, it's also compelling, and what it feels like, because you know what I mean?
Okay. Joey's sticking, when he sees somebody masturbating from his window, he's
compelled
for it. He's compelled.
And listen, I've lived in New York in the past, and we've all seen. I mean, I just wanted to give the most ridiculous.
I think we found our episode title, by the way.
watching somebody masturbate. But what I really mean is, or okay, let's go back to religion. Like, sorry, everybody. Let's say it's like eavesdropping on somebody confessing to a priest or something, like their darkest secret, and it just feels so. Tori's giving us that, and I think that PJ and Bjork have sort of allowed their lives to be shrouded in more mystery, and Tori's kind of been very confrontational lyrically and thematically, and has always been doing that. And this album is, exemplary of that. And also, I want to say, we think about those interviews and things that she was saying. It's like she was tasked with an impossible thing to go on radio and be interviewed on newspapers. How do you explain to somebody, how do you tell them what your record is about, when what your record literally is you reconstructing the ego death that you experienced with a shaman? That's literally what Boys for Pele is, among other things. It's literally her reconstructing this, this other dimension, this wild hallucination, this discovery in the darkest pits of her psyche. That's truly what it is what she did for this album. So then to have to like go on MTV or go on, Letterman or something and try to like say something concise and articulate, about what your record's about, all she could say was, it's about a breakup, Like, one of my favorite things that she says that's sort of really short and to the point, where she talks about she and Eric breaking up, and she says, I was hiding behind him and he was hiding behind me. And I love that she says that. And I get like, makes me kind of emotional to think about that. Like, because we all experience that, like hiding behind someone and they're hiding behind you. And it's like nobody's leading, right? And you're both trying to follow. And it's kind of the most like concise way to talk about a piece of the album, but it's not what the whole album's about at all. And she didn't want to talk about what it was about. Now, it's interesting and ironic even that she swung in such an opposite direction just a few years later when she began, one might argue, over explaining records and giving stories and materials. But it also ties in to the moment that we have said with Strange Little Girls and Scarlet's Walk, where she drew a line and said, I'm maybe not giving you all of me anymore. I'm giving you character Tori now. And I think that is a dividing line. And Pele into Choir Girl and Venus certainly was like, how much could she give, and I think that there is a dividing line there. So, again, any listeners might be offended by the, Bjork PJ thing. I just think it's important to acknowledge because they were the three. They were the three during that period. They really were. Like, like Alanis Morissette was a different thing. That was a mainstream light version in some ways. Just because, she talked about going down on somebody in a theater, she seemed to be like, oh, the bad girl. And it's like, we love our Alanis. But Bjork, PJ, and Tori were like a different thing. And there were lots of really exciting female musicians and singer-songwriters. And they have not really endured in the same way that PJ and Bjork and Tori have. So there's something that links the three of them that I think is really, besides a misogynistic, Q cover, right? Calling them the Weird Sisters. And, yeah, sorry, I don't want to go off track, but I think it's important contextually.
I think that, you bring up a good point that Tori does sort of set a dangerous precedent from the get-go with Little Earthquakes. Confessional. People expect that. When you have an expectation from a fan base or from your public, that's a hard thing to navigate, especially in the press, especially with new work. And, where, like you said, where is the line between public and private with something like that? And I think she's done a really good job of distancing her personal life in a way that protects it, which I admire quite a bit. It's something I've always admired about Tori is her ability to live outside of the conventional systems of the industry and still be able to produce work that's relevant and vital. And that's something that she's done pretty much from the beginning, being in England most of the time. But, going back for just a minute to discussing Pele in the press or while promoting it, simplifying it in that way, I think probably was the only way to make those talking points work, because it's such a intertextual, there's so many references, there are so many intellectual things that people aren't going to understand that we're still picking up on, now when we're re-listening to it, that we may have not picked up on in the last 25 years. I mean, there are real hidden clues and little just really, again, I'm going to use the word austere because I don't think it's offensive, but I do think this is a really austere work of intellectual rigor, just in the way that...
Rigor is a good word.
Yeah, I mean...
It's a really good word.
There's, the biblical element of the record. There's the, psychedelic part of the record. There's literature that's referenced in this. I mean, it's just it's so rich in the landscape that she develops for this record that I can't imagine having a coherent interview for this record at the time that it came out, which is probably why some of the interviews, are a little kooky.
Also, I mean, I think at this time in the 90s, and maybe now still, I think that and Joey, gosh, we could probably do like a whole discussion on this, but I think it's her intellectualism. One of the other things that is off-putting to people. People are scared when they don't know what you're talking about, especially I'm assuming an interviewer, right? If you're interviewing somebody and they answer the question way differently, or you don't know what they're talking about, it's hard to kind of get to that next question and get that interview flowing. And so I think people are intimidated by the stuff she talks about. And it just, I mean, we're all intellectual people. I think we're interested in like the philosophy, and even when we don't know stuff that she's talking about, like we're researching it, right? Like when she's talking about stuff I don't know about, I like to like get into it. But I think that turns a lot of people off. And that's one thing I do think that a lot of musicians, even if they're coming from that intellectual space, and I think there is a packaging that people do for music in the music industry before they put out there. And I don't think that she considers that a lot. And we love that, but I could understand how some people are just like, I don't know what to do with this.
Yeah, and something else that, just jumping off what you were saying, we're still figuring stuff out, as Maddie said, 28 years later about the record. So if you're imagining, and also I would say that, you guys probably agree, Maddie would agree, especially I think, that, one of the problems with criticism now is that like people have to listen to a record or watch a movie and make a decision about it immediately. It's like coming out of festivals. Everything is the best horror movie since The Exorcist. Everything is, the greatest performance you've ever seen. Everything is like, oh, this is going to win Best Oscar. Like, there is this like immediate, there's no time for anybody to sit with anything anymore. And it's really detrimental to the art of criticism. And I say criticism, not like criticizing. I've been talking to my students about this. We start off every semester about like thinking about what Matthew Goulash says about criticism, how if you dislike something and you expect it to change because of how you feel about it, you're a fool, because you have to change. The art is always there, it's fixed, and you have to come at it differently. There's no room for that. But I would say in 96, there was more space for that and more time. People probably listen to music longer than they do today before they make decisions about it. But even that wasn't enough time, because what she gave us is something that is just, just full of hidden meaning and secrets and sounds. I mean, the remaster from just a few years ago of Boys for Pele sounds incredible on headphones. Like I was at the gym and I'm like, I'm gonna listen to my Boys for Pele track listing. That's a really good way to get a sweat, but I wanted to make sure that it was finalized. And I was listening to things and I was like, man, I just these little like eruptions of sound and breath and just remarkable sonic landscape that is as every bit as every bit important as lyrics. The way she sings something totally changes the meaning of what it would be if somebody else were singing it. And one more thing I want to say about it is I think that when you're listening to it and these little moments are kind of revealing themselves, I can't think of another record in her repertoire that can change. It's like a mood ring, right? Like you just feel it differently. You feel emotional, you feel scared, you feel vulnerable, you feel tender, you feel angry, you feel like all different things within the same song, depending where you are in life, depending where you're listening to it, depending what you're doing with it. It is sort of just this living creature of an album, more so than the other records. And I don't know that she knew she was doing that. I don't think you could predict that is how it's going to take shape. But it is, I don't know, it's just kind of a miracle of a record in a lot of ways. And I'm sorry, one last thing I want to say, last thing, is that it's also really interesting that there are many moments of just improvisation that are included on the record. Most famously or infamously, Marianne, she just, came up with sort of on the spot, which is wild. And I don't know how much of that is a bit of lore, but it's been said by many people that it really was just like maybe meant to be something else. And she just kind of did start to finish this beautiful and probably many people's favorite song on the record, for many reasons. This just incredible, iconic Tori song that maybe came out of thin air, which is just shocking. And I don't know how to even imagine that as somebody who writes and tries to write. And she let go to such a degree that she created moments like that, and to feel confident to put those moments on record. I don't think she would do that now. I don't think she would, put, something that she just sort of came up with in the moment. She saves that for in concert now. And to think that Scarlett's Walk was only 6 years after this is also mind-blowing. That's all.
You know what I think is mind-blowing? I think you can never know what people are listening to at the gym. That's what I take away from all of that.
Oh my God, that's hilarious.
Someone might be listening to, to Lula on their earpods while they're doing a jog.
Not even. I'm going hard on that elliptical, going low with a high resistance, and it's Donut Song. It's like
he's going Beauty Queen.
Yeah.
That one note over.
I relate. I get it. I understand. We find motivation where we find motivation.
Correct.
Period.
No, I was just doing work. I had to come prepared. I had to just squeeze in.
You got to stress test it. Yeah.
Yeah.
Can we talk about the Rolling Stone review for a minute? Are we ready to talk about the Rolling Stone review just for a minute?
Should we read it?
I'm gonna read
a dramatic performance.
I'm going to read a part that I've been looking at. So, but at 18 tracks, the album's way too self-indulgent. Amos draws out every line with pretentious portent, but supposedly mystical lyrics like, quote, "And if I lose my Cracker Jacks at the tidal wave, I got a place in the Pope's rubber robe," are ultimately mystifying and, well, bad. What? Number one, who is this critic to be telling anyone what's self-indulgent and what's not? To me, writing something like that is itself self-indulgent as a critic. It's really unimaginative. And for a Rolling Stone review to not use their words and just call something bad, really, when you go back and read it today, I mean, I don't even know what to say to that. I think it's such an offensive. It's not really even a critique, right? It's really
Maddie,
crazy.
I think we also have to acknowledge, because it's important to say, or at least just let it hang there, that this was written by a woman. This wasn't a man. This wasn't a man who wrote it. The critic was a woman, which is its own. I mean, the irony that one would write something like that about Tori Amos when Tori has been talking about women on women violence and sort of internalized misogyny and bowing down to the patriarchy. It kind of makes it changes the color a little bit.
I'm sorry. I didn't realize it was written by a woman, and
I'm angrily Googling this woman now. I wonder what she thinks about
herself. I was gonna say, is she
Evelyn
still
McDonnell is her name.
Is she still working? Is she alive? Let's invite her on to talk about it. That's crazy. But you know what that probably was probably Rolling Stone covering its ass and saying, "Well, a woman wrote this, so there you go." I'm sure that was a calculated choice, but regardless of gender irrespective, like it's not a review. And to give that much space to tearing something apart is, nowadays you don't really see that a lot. And I think there's a little bit more of professional etiquette involved when people are reviewing things. You guys know this, when I'm working in the film business and I'm pitching reviews for films to places like the New Yorker or well, not so much the New York Times, but the New Yorker, major publications will not waste the space to run something that's fully negative like that. They just won't. And there's, at least in my dealings in the film world, there is a little bit of an implicit respect that people have put effort and put heart and soul into some of these projects. And if their critic doesn't like it, that's fine. But they will tell you, we're not going to spend our time and energy reviewing it. And I think that kind of etiquette could have been exercised a little bit around this record at the time.
We need to we should reach out to this woman at a later date and see if she's willing. It's fascinating.
To come on. She could be a season 2 guest. We could say, do you still feel this way?
I would love to know. This is fascinating. Number one, she co-wrote a book, or co-edited a book with Ann Powers in 95.
Oh, interesting.
Which is kind of interesting. But also, it seems that she wrote Bjork, Army of She, Icelandic, iconoclastic, irrepressible Bjork. 2001. So it goes back to that sort of like competition. I really feel like there was a space for women, and it was small. And if you were a little bit outside of that, whatever they felt the addressable market was, then you're out. Now, everybody has their opinion. Music is subjective. Art is subjective.
Sure, of course.
I'm not saying that.
We're not slagging on her.
It's just fascinating to me because this is very, like, subject matter wise, this is a match. But again, like, it was a very polarizing album. People did, plenty of people did not like it. And bad is what I'm sure plenty of people use to describe it. Now, I think that that's pointedly simplistic for Rolling Stone. I think that they specifically chose that word. But I agree that it's wouldn't fly today in terms of reviews, and it seems too subjective to me.
Not only that, but it seems like when you go back and read this, it seems like, again, a calculated move on the part of the editors of Rolling Stone to make sure they can criticize Tori Amos under the guise of having a woman do it. And number two, it seems like a neophyte critic out to make a name for themselves by doing something a little bit scandalous. That's how I read it. That's how it looks now to me.
Yeah, I think that's fair. I mean, I think that you have to, back when, it's the problem of criticism, the opposite now. I feel like people are afraid to criticize anything too deeply. I think that it was quite in the other extreme back in the 90s when there might have been a more serious music journalism, what's the word? The word is leaving my head, but the culture sort of valued tougher criticism or something, and it was like you had to only praise so many things. You could not give the thumbs up to everything, otherwise it would make your criticism meaningless or something, right? And so I wonder if she was sort of guided by that. And also I just think that Tori was just easy fodder. She was just easy to mock and make fun of, and I don't know.
Joe,
I think it's
Joey, you and I have experienced this a little bit writing critical pieces, even some of the stuff we've written together.
Yeah.
I think you're right about the thing about criticism maybe today not being as tough. I think, we were always sort of told when we were reviewing things and some of Tori's albums that a 10 was this. And right. Is it really a 10? You know what I'm saying? And I think there was a little bit more of a willingness back in that day to go there and to be a little bit more critical. To me, the thing is this review, where the review stumbles is it's not really being critical. It's dragging her. And I think right now with criticism, which I'm really fascinated by, because you guys know this, I intended when I went to college to be a film critic, and I was inspired by great film critics like Susan Sontag and Pauline Kael and Andrew Sarris, who, I luckily was able to get a class with at Columbia before he died. And these are true critics who went against the grain, who wrote about things in a broader context, that even when they were writing something that they may have not had a positive view of in terms of the artistry, the writing was still art. The writing was still beautiful. And the criticism then became something a lot more intellectual and a lot more meaningful. To me, as somebody who works in an industry where criticism is still really relied upon today, but for different reasons, I think the internet democratized criticism in a way that is not good for anybody, because now film critics, and I'm going to use the air quotes for that one, are beholden to their, the people who provide them with content to review, to get ad revenue, to get ads placed on their site, to be invited to things. It's very political now in a way that it used to not be. And I think because of the democratization of criticism on the internet, you have a lot less respect for critics, because I'm sorry to say this, anybody can be a critic if you have a computer or a phone. It's not like you have to go to school and study. It's not like you have to have a foundation of, theory behind you. You can just get on the internet and say that you don't like something, or that you do like something, to, curry favor in certain quarters. And, I wonder, how would this album be approached by critics today? Because of that, maybe it's better that it came out in 1996, where people could actually discuss it in a more intellectual way than they probably would today. Because nowadays, when critics have something in their possession, they don't really spend a lot of time with it. At least in 1996, you could assume that somebody was spending a little bit of time with something before they were writing about it.
Because there was more money for the journalist, and it was like, okay, this will be your assignment, right? You're going to have 2 weeks to listen to this record, and that doesn't exist anymore. People are churning out content nonstop. So, yeah.
Content, that's right, not reviews.
Yeah, right, content, correct.
One thing I wanted to bring up is the tour. We talked a little bit about how long it was, about how raw it was. Tori was eating a rare, barely cooked steak and half a dozen eggs before she hit the stage.
Oysters, not
oysters.
Eggs.
Yeah, no, she was doing eggs too. Wasn't
she was doing eggs too. It's just all protein, right?
Yeah, some wacky shit. And she was getting up on the stage and doing 2 shows a day. And this was my first tour. This is the first time I ever saw her live.
Me too.
Which, imagine how crazy that was to walk into a pretty, small, accessible theater and see the harpsichord on stage, and Tori was walking out to Dusty Springfield's Son of a Preacher Man onto the stage, which I thought was really cool. And I was thinking the other night about that and thinking, I wonder if they had to clear that, if they had to pay for that. I'm curious.
It
Or
was
if
just,
if they just did it. But I saw my first show in Pittsburgh. I was 21 years old, and I was working in an area of Pittsburgh called the Strip District, excuse me. And I was a waiter, and I was walking home. Yeah. And I was walking home from my lunch shift, and I bought a ticket like the day before. It was like I was in the 5th row, which was insane. And I had heard rumors about Tori, meeting people at the stage door and all of that. And I thought, well, I'm going to pop by and just see, scope it out and see what's going on. And I walked by, and there were 2 young ladies waiting at the door. And this was at like 2:30, 3 o'clock in the afternoon. And I was still in my waiter outfit, so I couldn't stay. But I want to know, because I'm going to have to figure this out. I think it might have been our friend Dora Dotson that was at the door that day. So I want to ask Dora
probably
to weigh in here if she was at Pittsburgh 96 waiting at the stage door in Pittsburgh in the middle of the day.
Maddie, I want to look up your set list for your first show, but this is so crazy. Tori came to Pittsburgh twice that tour on different legs. That is crazy that she,
same in Austin too.
Yeah, was it, everywhere. She went everywhere twice, basically. Now, was it the Pittsburgh show in September, or was it the one earlier? It was Pittsburgh, September 14th, 1996.
I can tell you some of the songs that she played that were very memorable. So when she went to do Tallulah, there was an issue with the backing tape, so she wasn't able to do Tallulah, and she did some sort of like version of Whoop, There It Is.
Oh, that's the bootleg Fresh and Pink, right?
Yes. Yeah.
I owned that. Yeah.
Same.
Wow.
It was a really wild show. It was really like, if you want to look it up and go through some of the other songs that were there.
Yeah, no, I'm
okay, so
very
that's
curious.
The September. That looks like the September one, I believe. There was a May one and a September show.
It was the May 30th one.
Oh, it was?
It was right after my birthday. Yep.
Okay,
I just turned 21.
Yeah.
Okay, so we've got Pittsburgh in May then.
I've got it pulled up. You want me to read the set list?
Yes. Let's go.
Okay, Maddie heard Beauty Queen, Horses, Yes Anastasia, Blood Roses, Little Amsterdam, Cornflake Girl, Little Earthquakes, Donut Song, Happy Phantom, Precious Things, Not the Red Baron, Called a Light Sneeze, Daniel by Elton John, Tallulah, Pretty Good Year, Me and a Gun, Landslide, Winter, Whoop, There It Is, Mr. Zebra, and Hey Jupiter.
I have Honey on that list too from Tori set.
Oh, maybe it was cut from, maybe I was looking at the bootleg one. Maybe it accidentally cut it.
Or they put in, and then, yeah. Either way, I was looking at Tori set because I find, I like.
Yeah, you're right. Sorry. Honey is after Mr. Zebra. So it's Mr. Zebra, Honey, and then Hey Jupiter.
Wow.
I love this bootleg with Daniel is what, like, I love that cover generally, but I love this version.
It's really good. That's a really, really great one. Did you see a 96 show, or did you go later, Kristen? You were just a baby.
Did I go to a show in 96? No, and it's traumatic. And
sorry, I only went to one.
I know, but it's where, from Dent reviews and stuff, that's where, people are like, oh my God, I went to whatever show, she rocked it. I think I'm going to go to 4 more. And that's where I realized, like, oh, this is what we do, right? And it was so early in my fandom. I had been a fan for less than a year because I got into Tori when Boys for Pele came out, and kind of discovered all those albums at the same time. But that and those Dent reviews, that's where I was like, oh, if I'm going to be part of, like, if this is my girl, if this is my music, this is what we do. And so I was glad to learn that early on, and also like plot and plan for that. I was so young. I was only 12 on that tour. And then in 98, 99, I still was only able to go to one show because I was so young. But I knew as soon as I was able, like physically able to drive a car or pay for a bus or to hitch a ride, it was on. And that is what happened, obviously.
Joey, what was your set list?
So I went to, interestingly, I my wonderful Aunt Janet got me a ticket, my sister and I, because my cousin Lauren's sister and brother-in-law were taking her to see Tori. It was August 26th in Holmdel, New Jersey. At the time, it was called the PNC Arts Center, and now it's it was called the Garden State Arts Center. Now it's the PNC Arts Center. It might have changed names. It's the same place that we saw the birthday show in 2002. So it was actually like a open outdoor theater with a big lawn. And I was like, I think in the back row of the covered seats. So very, very far back. And a very, very large crowd. And I was 13. I would have turned 14 that September. So I was 13 was the first concert that I've ever been to for anybody in my life. And it was that is what turned me into like the type of fan that I am now, like seeing her live. So the set list, what do you want to say? Something snarky was about to come out of Matthew. He thought I was going to say it turned me gay.
And then I remembered Under the Pink.
It was Under the Pink. Yeah. Episode 2, everybody go. So my set list was Beauty Queen, Horses, I'm on Fire, Carmelite Sneeze, Cornflake Girl, Butterfly, Little Earthquakes, Crucify, Cloud on My Tongue, Precious Things, Love Song, Space Dog, Tallulah, Me and a Gun, Mother, A Case of You, In the Springtime of His Voodoo, Professional Widow, and Hey Jupiter.
Your set list definitely wins.
Wild, right?
If there's a competition, that's a really good set list.
That's good. And I love I'm on Fire. I've never been a Bruce fan, even though I know you are, Joey. And I know Jersey. It's just like...
I mean, like, within reason. I'm not listening until, like, The Rising, you know?
That song, yes. But I'm on Fire is such a Tori Amos song to me, you know? Wait, can I read the set list that I could have... The show, my birthday show that I had to miss that I... Can we just...
If you want to be an emotional cutter that way, go for it.
Okay, I'm going to cut. Okay. Beauty Queen, Horses, Happy Phantom, Sister Janet, Cowls, We Love a Little Carmelite Sneeze, Cornflake, Donut Song, Space Dog, Crucify, Upside Down, that's fun for 96, Precious Things, Not the Red Baron, Blood Roses, Pretty Good Year, Me and a Gun, Saturday Afternoons in 1963, which I absolutely love that cover on Scarlet's Walk. So
we got to hear it in Wallingford. Yep.
Cloud on My Tongue, Father Lucifer, Small Town Boy, Honey, and Hey Jupiter. I love Small Town Boy. I did not know it was on that set list, but I would say of those three, Joey, I think yours quote unquote wins against Formative.
I think it's my favorite set list of all time, and that it is my first. Oh. It was just to get Mother, to get Space Dog, to get Tallulah, to get A Case of You, to get I'm on Fire, to get Butterfly. I mean, just Professional Widow, which was quite rare actually. Of course I can argue for lots of other shows that have different sentimentality, but for a first show, I think that's pretty shocking and pretty amazing for a set list.
Okay. So I would like to know from you homosexuals what your first memory of hearing Boys for Pele was. Where were you? What was happening? Let's start with the lead homosexual, Joey.
Thank you to my favorite hooker of the whole bunch, Matthew. I mean, so it's kind of a repeat of the story from Under the Pink a little bit. It was, my sister and I were listening to Tori because we'd gotten turned on to her by a friend. And that was 94. So we were, in real time for 96. Went to Borders Books and Music in Garden State Plaza, RIP. In New Jersey, Promise, New Jersey, and went to the Borders and got a copy the weekend that it came out. It wasn't the day that it came out. It was the weekend. My dad took us and got a copy. Super excited. I think we got it both on cassette and CD. I can't remember why exactly, but I'm pretty sure that we got both. Maybe because there was only like one CD player in one spot and we had cassette players elsewhere. I wish I'd kept those cassettes. And I remember getting like a little poster that the guy at the store gave me that was just, he was like, here, you can just like take this, even though it had just come out, like he probably shouldn't have been removing the promotional materials, but he gave it to me. And my sister and I listened to it and we were like, just that, at this point, cliched response to it, being like, what is this? This is so weird. And I remember, if memory serves, the songs that I felt able to access early on were Carmelite Sneeze, Tallulah, and Putting the Damage On. those were the songs that felt, and maybe Marianne, but I remember those for some reason felt most accessible, and I was able to get into them. One of the wonderful things about it being such a difficult album is that it felt like you were experiencing it for the first time for a really long time. And I think that that's sort of a special bonus of such a complicated, challenging album. So it took a while. So it wasn't like I had a like sort of immediate first experience, but it took a long time, and it took listening to it alongside the other records to finally sort of click. And then I think it really wasn't until seeing her live that everything's sort of like back to what I say about contextualizing music. And I think it did it for a lot of people in the crowd. I think seeing her perform those songs that way against the other songs just explained something that was implicit and unable to be articulated. You had to just sort of experience it.
It opened it up.
Yes.
Senora Keys, tell us your tale.
You mean the Swedish cherry and an apple pie? Thanks. I'll take my title rightfully. I don't know what you said because you're on mute, but fuck you. Yes, I've told this tale a few times. When I discovered Tori, it was through a friend's older sister who was cool, but I had really good taste in music. And so it was beginning of 96, I think, if memory serves. And so Boys for Pele had just come out. So when I went to buy everything, I kind of got the Holy Trinity all at once. And, you know, all of that's kind of mixed up together. It's interesting because, like, I'm only 12, right? But my memory, like the ones that stick out, Blood Roses Marianne was my favorite song. I love Piano Tori. And I just think that the orchestra work there is top, incredible, beautiful song. Highlight Sneeze obviously was a highlight for me, and I've always loved Damage, Donut. And now, you know, like over time, that album evolved differently for me and over the years, and my kind of top songs off that album are different now, like Little Amsterdam, Voodoo. God, I've always loved Voodoo. And so those are the things that kind of stand out to me the most. But I think when this album really clicked for me for the first time, I want to say it was maybe a year later. I went skiing for the first time with my friend, and we went to Taos. And that's when I like figured out that Under the Pink was written there. I remember we were just vibing to Boys for Pele, in particular Little Amsterdam and Voodoo. And I remember we were like at ski school, and then I was like, should we just like go sit in the parking lot and listen to Boys for Pele? And she was like, yes, bitch. And that is like, we got our hot cocoa, we like kicked our legs up in the minivan, and we were just vibing. And I remember being like, oh, I just like knew it was going to be a lifelong thing, you know, from that moment. And like, just I remember how cold the air was, and it really kind of like brought that Boys for Pele January austere kind of vibe. And that's when I was like, this is my album, which is a very happy memory for a tough album. Matthew, talk about it.
Picture it. Seattle, 1996.
What alley were you in with what drag queen?
He was at the Gold Coast.
I was not. I was living in Seattle. I was 20 years old, and I had shoulder-length blonde hair, like Kristen Keys. And I was living in a place for the first time where I felt like I could express myself and be myself, and it was a really exciting time. I was getting into clubs and bars with fake ID and doing my own thing in a place that seemed very, very far away from where I grew up in rural Michigan, in a real city with other gay people. I'd never had that kind of freedom before. I was wearing skirts in public. You know, it was a wild time. So I bought the record, I think on the day it came out, in Seattle, Capitol Hill, and I didn't understand it. It went really above my head. I loved Caught a Light Sneeze. Obviously, great choice for a single for that record, if you think about it. Accessible, yet still contains the essence of the record. And at first, it was only Caught a Light Sneeze and Hey Jupiter, and the rest of it was too challenging for me. It was a really difficult album to process, and I think it was so dark that it was sort of a hard contrast for me, because it was a really joyful time for me in terms of what I was doing in my life. You know, it was a really carefree time. So I do think, though, looking back, that that sort of like really formative period for my identity being created happened there and happened as I was listening to this record. So listening back to it, there's a lot of complicated feelings, of who I used to be and how I relate to it now, which is completely different. And I will say that I was also, when Tori was putting together the re-release and the remaster, it was when I was working with her. So I would always bring this up to her, hoping that she would throw me some sort of crumb or morsel of information or something special. And I never got it. But every time we were in a car, I would bring up Boys for Pele. How's it going? What are you doing? Tell me more. And she was very demure, very, very quiet about it. She doesn't really like to talk about that kind of stuff. She didn't really get too into it.
I just need to say, let's manifest one day we get all the alternates of Boys for Pele. Let's put it out there. Let's manifest any crumbs or alternate. I mean, I would love just like a whole alternate take of the album. I know it'll never happen, but crazier things have happened, like White Telephone to God is a single. So.
I once asked her in an interview, I don't remember which year it was. It had nothing to do with the actual interview that I was doing, but I asked her if she would ever consider performing an album like Boys for Pele from beginning to end, because at the time that was kind of a trend in music and concerts. And she thought about it and didn't answer for, a beat. And I was like, oh, great. And she said, no, I don't think I'd do that. That was the answer.
Interesting. Because in that interview that she did with Noah, I wouldn't say she wasn't interested, but she was like, would people come out for that? Which to me is a no. It's like when you ask her for a song, she doesn't write it down, and you're like, God damn it.
We are going to go to messing because we have God's work ahead of us here. And before we start messing, I'm just going to say, don't send us hate mail for changing this track list or removing anything from this track list or adding anything to this track list. This album is not a sacred cow.
We don't say that we know it better. We're not saying that. It's a project. It's a fun way to just listen to the album more. The end.
So today we're going to do something really fun. We're going to do drawing names from a hat. Random order today. Not rigorous. We're going to do it out of the Cell Block 13 hat. That's a great place to buy jock straps if you need them. Here we go.
Jock strap for?
You ask a lot about jock straps, and
I think I
think you know enough. It's buttless underwear.
So it's a thong.
No,
because a thong goes between your butt cheeks. Your butt is just out. Don't you remember at Drag Race my senior year? I wore a jock strap. You could see my butt through my torn jean shorts. You don't remember that?
The purpose of a jock strap is for sports, to hold your shit in place when you're playing sports. But the jockstrap has really been co-opted by gay culture because it has no butt, if you hear what I'm saying.
Why don't you just Google?
Yeah.
I just don't really understand. I don't know.
Well, here
she's playing up this prude thing that is nonsense.
I've shown her a jockstrap before.
First of all, it was in my laundry. You didn't show it to me. You had to because it was wrapped around my child's laundry.
Is.
No, but I don't understand
the children.
what it's for. Yeah, let's bring the children.
It's like lingerie or something,
It's
just like it's just like sexy sex wear.
It's not sexy on everybody. You gotta have a good butt.
No, that's true.
All right, so I'm picking a name out of a hat.
I hope it's
a jockstrap hat, and
Let's go.
This is how we're gonna do it. All right, you ready? Up, up, up.
God damn it.
The mouthy one goes first. Let's mess.
I think that you cheated. Okay. All right.
He's a man of honor.
I went, concept-y, of course. But I went less narrative, and I went more based on sound this time because there's just a lot going on here. So I went through the stages of a volcanic eruption. So I reduced the stages to 4, which is the magma accumulation, the pre-eruption, if you will, the seismic activity, the earthquakes, you know what I'm saying? The actual eruption, and then the cooling post-eruption dormancy phase. Hence,
gross.
Spoiler alert. So there's 4 of those. I know it's a little gross. And so I took those 4, and then I also was kind of thinking about the gardens. And Beekeeper just keeps coming back somehow, and I was thinking about the gardens. So I played around with a few ideas. Like I actually think that within my stages of eruption, you can mix these songs around, but this is what I am proposing. Number 1, we open our Boys for Pele playlist with Alamo. I know. Now, why? I love the intro, which has not really been replicated live. And I think there is, if we're thinking about like something thematically, it's like a little build, you know, a little bit of something, a little sprinkle that something's going to come. But I also think like content wise, if anybody hasn't listened to Songs of Tori Amos Alamo episode with Saker on it, I think she does an incredible job of breaking down this song, the lyrics. And it's just like very heartbreaking. So it kind of like brings me back to that breakup that we're about to kind of go through. But I really was thinking more sound wise. It's soft. And then it has like a little bit of that, like, you know, we have like a little bit of a build too. Okay, so Alamo, and then we go to Tallulah, and I went solely because I needed to like pick up the pace here already. And 3 to Marianne, because again, there's so much build in Marianne. And I think also just the reference to Marianne and the did she choose to end her life? Did she not? It's just like there's this like emotional build that we're working towards, and we don't really have that like resolution or that like eruption yet. And then we Beauty Queen horses it, and we're using that as a vehicle again to get us to our next stage, which is our seismic activity stage. So it's London Girls, Hey Jupiter, Father Lucifer, Little Amsterdam, Agent Orange. So Little London Girls, I went based on sound alone, that kind of like little like reverberation sound that you hear in the beginning. It almost sounds like the strings of the piano kind of like bouncing around on something metal. Like that really just like kind of brings me into the earthquake space, the seismic activity. Hey Jupiter, just shit starts getting weird, right? That hotel room that she's describing with the ghost of John Lennon or whatever, things are just getting weird. And same with Father Lucifer. Things are building. That song, I think, is a favorite now. At the time, I felt like it was maybe not polarizing, but like people didn't understand it. People, you know, the title alone is unsettling to people. Even her dad was put off by it to start. So I think it kind of gives us a little bit of that like earth moving below us feeling that we're going for. Little Amsterdam, again, just like the sway of it, it's got like a seismic quality to like tectonic plates moving. And then Agent Orange, I did debate cutting, but just, you know, we had to keep Mr. Joel in there. And I also liked ending each section with possibly a short song, or including a short song if I could in each section. I also included it because of the palm oil fans, which I think references a bit of the unrest going on in the community, with possibly trying to get backstage or whatever was going on with Joel around that time. There was a lot of like frantic energy coming at them about being close to her, close to the music. And I think Agent Orange doesn't tackle that seriously, but it refers to it. So now we're in our eruption phase, which starts with none other than Blood Roses, no notes. Muhammad, my friend, because, you know, Pele is blowing. And to me, that is just like one of those top moments in the album. Love it. It's also kind of about the center in my playlist, which, you know, kind of is the glue that keeps us together. Then I do the rookery intro into voodoo. So rookery voodoo to regular voodoo. I think that I kind of wish she would do it like that live, you know, like that would be really good. Play around with it, extend it. She could do one of her jams to it, which I think would be really fun. They flow together really nicely on the playlist. Like it could have been on the album like that and it would have worked. Professional Widow, and then Caught a Light Sneeze. I think that that's all self-explanatory if I'm going by sound. I wrote that I have this theory about Caught a Light Sneeze when we're talking about singles, top songs, reception by critics. I really think that the song is her least popular. Again, subjective because I don't have the data in front of me, but I feel like it's not. People talk about God, they talk about Cornflake Girl. I've never heard anybody be like, oh, I loved Caught a Light Sneeze, although I think it is a very loved single. That's not what people know her for. And I think it's because it's harpsichord. I think that the harpsichord is just not accessible for people, although I think she uses it in an incredibly perfect way where I wouldn't think anybody would be like, that's harpsichord, but I think it like gets into people's brains and they just, again, don't know how to like process it. I think it kind of like clogs their brain a little bit. I think it's a little too advanced for some. No offense. Okay, and then cooling / dormancy phase. We are going to start with Mr. Zebra. I needed a fun little guy to cool us down, and I think it's almost like, you know, how she plays it. It's like little like going up and going down. There's that descent kind of vibe. To cooling. which I actually wasn't going to put on here, but I know that she had talked about the idea of, a volcano saying this is cooling. And once I found out that was like actually the stage of the, eruption of a volcanic activity, I was like, oh, it's too perfect not to put in. So Mr. Zebra, cooling, Twinkle, Way Down, Not the Red Baron, and then end with Motor Maids. And that was really, I just like, Motor Maids was one of those songs for so long that was basically folklore. And I just assumed we would never hear it. And it's weird. It's like so many people wanted it. They wanted it out. I was never one of the people that was like, I have to hear Motor Maids. But it was one of those things that it came out and I ended up liking it more than I ever thought I would, I guess. I don't know what I thought. I kind of thought it didn't really exist. But to me, it's clear it's improv. And it's, Karen Benz. I'm giving it to Karen Benz. She deserves her song.
How many songs in total are on your playlist? And what did you cut? Did you cut anything? You did. You cut some things.
Oh, I didn't cut anything.
Are you sure?
There's no Twinkle on there, right?
There's Twinkle. We have
I
Mr.
missed
Zebra
it.
Cooling, Twinkle, Way Down, Not the Red
Sorry.
Baron, Motor Maids. So I could have cut some songs in there, and the reason I didn't is because it would have made the sections a little uneven. Twinkle isn't like a loved song in the community, is it? I feel like people consider it kind of like a throwaway.
A little bit, I think, yeah.
But there's like a real sadness there.
Can you read the whole thing to us when you get a chance? I want to just visualize it again.
Okay. Alamo, Tallulah, Marianne, Beauty Queen Horses. Next section. London Girls, Hey Jupiter, Father Lucifer, Little Amsterdam, Agent Orange. Next section. Blood Roses, Muhammad, Rookery Intro, Voodoo, Professional Widow, Cuddle-Late Sneeze. Next section. Zebra, Cooling, Twinkle, Way Down, Not the Red Baron, Motor Maids. I went more off of sound than story here, which was kind of fun for me because I usually don't, but I couldn't really find a way in, and it's like I can't. It's too special, So there we are. What you think? A+, A-, B+? What do you think?
I need to have your playlist.
Okay.
I want to hear it in that.
Yeah, I need to
me
I need
too.
to listen to it. Very surprising, I will say that.
Yeah, I'm surprised by it too.
I appreciate the concept, and I like the surprising intro, and the order is pretty fresh. So
I'm surprised by London Girls that, sonically I know that's what you were going based off of, but it's surprising to have a cover in there. Yeah.
London Girls, a little bit of that was like a little bit of like a, not like an inside joke to myself, but she played that at my first show. No. And it's just a song that my best friend and I at the time really loved, and I just assumed we'd never hear, and it was our first show together.
That's wild. That's
and
crazy when that happens, right?
Yeah, we're like children, we're like, ah! So I kind of put that in there. I also think I kind of regret not putting like Smells Like Teen Spirit on my Little Earthquakes playlist and stuff. So I don't know, just trying to make it fun. And Alamo to me is one of those like great transition songs. Like I hear Under the Pink in it. It's very B-sidey to me. I hear Boys for Pele in it, so I think it's a good transition. But I've always loved that song. But after hearing Saker talk about it on Songs of Tori Amos, it's like, oof, really, really good. So anyway, okay.
Nice.
Cole, who's next? Matthew?
Who's
Here's the hat.
next?
Here we go.
Send me Matthew.
Oh,
I'm psychic.
Okay.
you are.
This one's
Go
crazy.
play Lotto.
So, all right. I have a really literary concept, which is usually, not my purview. It's usually the purview of the blonde, but I had to go there. So there were two things for me that spoke to me when I was re-listening to the record, and that was Dante's Inferno and also Tennessee Williams. So what I did for my playlist is I threw out everything I knew about this record, and I assigned each song to a woman from Tennessee Williams' works. He calls them the women of the fog. He describes them as women emerging from the fog in his head. Each of the women are assigned to a song. So as I mentioned in our text, I have a lot of notes for this, and I'm going to get through it as fast as I possibly can. So what I'm starting with is Caught a Light Sneeze, because I think that song to me, it really embodies the era. And the character that is assigned to Caught a Light Sneeze is a character called Sissy Goforth, or Flora Goforth, from a play called The Milk Train Doesn't Stop Here Anymore, which was later made into a film directed by Joseph Losey in 1969, starring Elizabeth Taylor in the lead role. And the film is called Boom. And the character of Sissy Goforth is an actress. She's an addict. She's attention seeking and really just bombastic. And I thought that fit really well for Caudalite Sneeze. So from there, we are going to go to Donut Song. Donut Song is, I think, really the silent killer of this record. And for this one, put in Alexandra Delago, who is the lead of the play and the film Sweet Bird of Youth, played in the film by Geraldine Page, played later in another film by Elizabeth Taylor. And this is another actress, another addict, and she's very needy, very depressed, and she is traveling with a gigolo to a small town in Mississippi and trying to fly under the radar when she can do anything but it's the neediness here that spoke to me, and that I think you can find in Donut Song. Donut Song is a devastating song, and I liked it right after Caudalite Sneeze, and the energy of that really, I wanted to shift it and get serious, and I wanted to hear those piano chops. So from there, we go to Way Down. And on my playlist, I'm using the Way Down from Tales of a Librarian, which has the additional backup singing, which is really gorgeous.
Yes, same. I should have said that for mine too.
Sure.
What?
From there, I'm also assigning Way Down to the character of Maxine from Night of the Iguana, which is a play about a preacher who has fallen, and she's kind of this bawdy, lusty lady whose glory days are a little bit behind her, but she's always sort of like looking out for the next opportunity and, dressing very sexy. And it reminded me of, going to meet a great big star, going to drive this great big car. So I liked Maxine for that. From Way Down, I go into Blood Roses. I love the transition of the background singers into the chaos of Blood Roses. And for me, Blood Roses is Blanche Dubois from Streetcar Named Desire, a character that I've studied, written about, have been fascinated by since I was really young. Fragile Southern belle who's really fallen on hard times, comes to visit her family. She's not wanted there. She's assaulted by her brother-in-law. It's a very dark, very archetypal role that has become probably the greatest role for a woman in the theater. And I've been really lucky to have seen it on stage too. I saw Gillian Anderson do it in Brooklyn back in, I think, 2017, which was really incredible. But I think
I saw that performance too. It was amazing.
Yeah. I mean, I think Blood Roses really hits the highs and the lows of that character. The character's losing her mind. So I think that song is, a good song about losing your mind. From there, I'm going to go into Marianne. So the part about Dante's Inferno is that we're sort of descending into hell with this playlist. And the thing in Dante's Inferno that I thought was so interesting was as he's going down and being led, he's seeing all of these familiar characters in the various 9 circles of hell. So I envisioned this journey into Pele as seeing all of the different characters from Tennessee Williams' universe as you're descending into hell, if that makes sense. So Marianne to me just is a moving and primal song. I mean, it's just, there's something to it that's just, it touches a nerve. There's just a well of deep sadness in that song for me. It's about what could have been. And the character that I assigned to that is Catherine from Suddenly Last Summer, who is, again, played by Elizabeth Taylor, a young woman who knows some dangerous truths about those around her that nobody wants to hear. So she is threatened with a lobotomy. And it just reminds me of sort of like a spiral down, and that's what Marianne reminds me of as well. From there, we go to Not the Red Baron, and Not the Red Baron is, for me, going to be Lady Torrance from a film called The Fugitive Kind. She's a seductress, an older woman who loses everything in a fire. So Not the Red Baron to me seems like a song that sort of burns it all down. That's the feeling that I get from Not the Red Baron. And that one really stuck out to me on this re-listen. It's not a song I listen to a lot casually, but within the context of this record and as a song, a shorter song too, I think it's really atmospheric and really good. From Not the Red Baron, we're still continuing the descent into hell, and we go into Father Lucifer. And this is the only character that I have used a male Tennessee Williams character for, and that's going to be Stanley Kowalski from Streetcar Named Desire. I think the archetypal Father Lucifer. And Father Lucifer, without editorializing too much, I think is one of Tori's very, very top songs, one of her best songs of all time. Okay, and then from Lucifer, I put in both Sucker and Walk to Dublin back to back. And the characters there are going to be Mrs. Stone and the Contessa from The Roman Spring of Mrs. Stone, a play, again, about an aging actress who is very needy, a recurring theme in Tennessee Williams' world. And the characters are kind of scheming and conniving and chasing after youth and plotting against each other. So I thought those two songs sort of embodied that a little bit. From Walk to Dublin, we're going to go to Mr. Zebra. Mr. Zebra is again going to be a character from Sweet Bird of Youth. Miss Lucy, who is a prostitute and a kept woman of a gangster. And she starts out as sort of this good time girl and is abused, and people discount her. And at the end, she is the character who's able to step forth and tell the truth and get the wheels of justice moving. So I liked the sort of the swing of that song, and it made sense for me that the good time girl nature of that character was sort of depicted in that song to me. The energy, at least. From Mr. Zebra, I'm going to go to Tallulah. And Tallulah, for me, is going to be Serafina from The Rose Tattoo, played by Anna Magnani in the film, and Maureen Stapleton on the stage. Won Anna Magnani the Oscar for Best Actress in 1955. For her English language film debut, she learned the part phonetically. And this is one of Tennessee Williams' only... it's considered to be a tragic comedy, so it got elements of comedy that his other plays don't really have. It's very over the top about an Italian widow. So I liked the energy of Tallulah with the energy of this particular character who's very expressive and volatile in her own comedic way. From there, we're going to go to Motormaids, and Motormaids remains in The Rose Tattoo. It's the daughter, Rosa, of Serafina. So Rosa represents hope and change and innocence in a way that I think Motormaids really portrays. I think Motormaids is a really pure song. And when I was working with Tori in 2016, I mentioned, I was hinting nonstop. I think I was emailing her team pretty much daily saying, hey, what's going on with the Boys for Pele reissue? I need to know for my planning purposes, right? So finally, they sent it to me, and I remember immediately downloading it onto my Netflix computer and listening to Motormaids over and over in the Netflix office when I should have been paying attention to many, many other things. But that was my priority that day. Okay, so from Motormaids, I'm going to go to Alamo. And Alamo for me is going to be Big Mama from Cat on a Hot Tin Roof. She's a woman whose time has passed, who still gets dressed up and still really believes in the traditions of the South. And in the end, again, is one of those characters who sort of rises above it all for telling the truth, despite great odds, despite, being a woman in the South who's very repressed. So I love Alamo, and I love the remastered version. It's immaculate. Okay, so then I'm going to do In the Springtime of His Voodoo right after that. And for me, Voodoo, again, is going to be Cat on a Hot Tin Roof. It's Maggie the cat bringing that angry snatch energy to the table. It just made sense for me. From there, we have Little Amsterdam. Little Amsterdam is going to be the title character Baby Doll, which was Tennessee Williams' only, I believe, original screenplay that he did that didn't start out as a theater production. And Baby Doll is a, young woman sexualized by everybody who holds all of this power over men by infantilizing herself. And I think there's a very sexual energy running through Little Amsterdam. Also in this section, I think there's a lot of talk about motherhood, which I found really interesting. So Amsterdam, we're going to go into Beauty Queen and Horses. Maybe together we'll make mother well. And that character for me is going to be Laura from the Glass Menagerie. Fragile, disabled, and very meek. And in living in her own sort of world of glass animals, which I think is a really sad metaphor and a fascinating a fascinating character based on Tennessee Williams' sister in real life. Beauty Queen and Horses, just the desolate emotional landscape of that song to me matched the character of Laura Wingfield, her interior, which was very, very sad. And from there, we're going to go into Professional Widow. And Professional Widow is going to be assigned to the character of Violet Venable from Suddenly Last Summer, played by Katharine Hepburn in the film. This sort of dowager empress of the South who has a lot of money and a lot of power and a lot of influence. And her son Sebastian was mysteriously killed while he was vacationing with Catherine, her niece. Catherine knows some truths about Violet and her family that Violet doesn't want to be let out into the public. So Violet, is threatening Catherine with institutionalization and lobotomy. So I really liked the aggressiveness of that song being assigned to that character. And from there, we have Beulah Land, which I thought right after Widow was a really nice, almost religious moment. Beulah, as you know, means preacher's wife. That's what I read. So I'm assigning that song to the character of Mrs. Winemiller from the play and film Summer and Smoke, but also to two of the auntie characters, Aunt Nani and Aunt Rose Comfort. Aunt Nani is from Sweet Bird of Youth, and Aunt Rose Comfort is from Baby Doll. And these are characters who are just sort of genteel Southern women, older and stalwart. So I thought that song fit really nicely with all of those characters. From Beulah, we're going to go to Muhammad, My Friend. And that is Alma from Summer and Smoke, a spinster, a needy spinster who has been, led on by her male romantic protagonist. She wants to be a good girl, but at the same time, she wants to be a slut. So I thought that really went well in this particular vibe of this song. Cooling I've assigned to the character of Heavenly Finley from Sweet Bird of Youth. She's a young woman who was involved with the gigolo traveling with Alexandra Delago. He has a history with Heavenly. They are in love. Her father is a gangster who won't allow them to be together, mainly because she's very, very young. And the gigolo has given her an STD, which has necessitated a serious operation, which renders her infertile for the rest of her life. So to me, Cooling really echoed what that character is going through. In the play, she's a very sort of not a main role. So it's interesting to me to explore the pain of that character a little bit more through the Song of Cooling. And I think they mirror each other's journey really nicely. So from Cooling, we're going to go to Damage, Putting the Damage On. And I've given that song the character of Stella Kowalski, the sister of Blanche Dubois, husband of Stanley Kowalski, who's caught in the middle of epic tug of war between two people that she loves, hating each other. And in the play, Stanley rapes her sister and has her committed to an asylum. Stella's pregnant through the whole thing. You may have heard the iconic Stella, that's her. So Putting the Damage On, boy, you still look pretty when you're putting the damage on, really reminded me of Stella. And the choice that she makes to stay with Stanley, despite knowing how different they are and despite having a really good idea of what he's done to her sister. So from Damage, we're going to go in the Rookery Voodoo, which I also really love. I wasn't expecting anybody else to have that on their playlists. And that's actually the one thing that I was able to get Tori to talk about. We were in a car going somewhere and the track list had been released and I was just really prying for information. And I said, Tori, what's the Rookery? What's that all about? What's a Rookery? And she looked at me and did like a dramatic pause. She went, where the birds live. So that's what I got from her when I asked her about the Rookery.
Is that true? Isn't it like a church thing? What's happening?
She said it's where the birds live. I don't know. So from there, we're going to go to Hey Jupiter. And for my playlist, I'm choosing to use the Dakota mix of Jupiter. And for me, the character...
Hold on.
Yeah.
I'll take you back. A rookery is a place where a group of birds nest together in a concentrated area, often in a location that's hard for predators to reach. They can be found in a variety of places, including islands, forests, and wetlands. They have some in Louisiana, so we're gonna pretend it came from there.
Oh, she was right. It's where the birds. Yes. It's where the birds live.
She knows what she's talking about. Don't doubt her.
Take it from the bottom of Rookery.
But that is really the only nugget of anything I got for the Boys for Pele remaster from Tori Amos was it's where the birds live.
You know, where the birds live.
So from there, I'm going to go into Hey Jupiter, and it's the Dakota mix for me or nothing. To me, this is assigned to the character of Amanda Wingfield from The Glass Menagerie, one of Tennessee Williams' great characters based on his mother. And in the beginning scenes of Amanda's introduction into the play or into the film, where she's played by Joanne Woodward in 1987, directed by Paul Newman, the character of Amanda is selling magazine subscriptions over the phone. So the no one's picking up the phone, to me, really connected with that character. But that character is also sort of lost a little bit in the past and is a bit of a specter who's always thinking about the many gentlemen callers that she once had when she was a beautiful young woman, and just really kind of remaining stuck. And I think Nothing's Been the Same reminds me a lot of Amanda Wingfield's predicament in the film and in the play. And then that's not the last song. And then I'm going to end with Snow Cherries from France.
What? No.
Yep, I am. And
that's already, what album was that on already?
It was intended to be on this album.
He put it on another album.
No, but you put it on another album.
Yes, this one I'm putting the Gold Dust mix on.
Oh my God, that's a cheat, but okay. I've noted it for the
way to shit the bed at the last minute. You know?
So for me, I'm not going to give this one a character, but I am going to assign a Tennessee Williams woman, Rose Williams, Tennessee Williams' sister, who Laura from The Glass Menagerie was based on, had a long history of debilitating mental illness, and Tennessee Williams and his family were devastated by this because he adored his sister. He wrote about her a lot. He loved her a lot, but ultimately he had to be okay with putting her in an asylum and sort of tucking her away. And that's where she would, her life would end in an asylum, and he would be haunted by this woman for the rest of his life. And oh, then he let me go would remind me of maybe what she was thinking as she was let go by her family, which is a sad way to end this. Usually I'm looking for the optimistic ending, but not this time. This is
you guys really swapped.
You guys, we did swap, and you were right, guys, that I forgot Damage. Damage goes in my accumulation phase. No, I love that poontang the Damage on.
Album title. I mean, episode title.
Or album title.
Album title. I decided I could live without Agent Orange, which has never been a favorite of mine, if I'm being perfectly honest. And I also cut Twinkle, which to me seemed like this is going to be very critical and maybe controversial, but a little bit of a cop-out at the end of this album to have Twinkle.
I don't think so.
I don't like it as an album closer. I'm not afraid to say it. And
really?
Damage feels like the real album closer to me. I'm kind of with you there. I don't hate it. I think it's a moment of quiet.
No, it's a palate cleanser. No, it's supposed to be a palate wrong. It's supposed to be a
it's like
cleanser.
sorbet at a wedding.
Yeah. But you have to have it.
I didn't need another solo piano track either on this on my version of the album. I just didn't. And if I was going to do it, it wouldn't be Twinkle. It would be Butterfly, which I struggled with and I really wanted to put on this playlist. But I thought you would be even madder at me for putting Butterfly on than Snow Cherries.
No, I would
actually,
prefer
I don't
Butterfly,
know.
But my concept is I thought I did this if I was it's funny because you both have sort of brought up things that sort of lead into my concept quite well, and there's actually a few moments where I actually sequence songs the same way that you all did, which is cool. Her approach to live performance and the way she puts a set list together, it's very thematic. It's very I don't want to say literal, but she likes to pair imagery, she likes to pair words and titles together. So instead of tormenting myself with trying to reorganize something that I think is quite perfect as is, one of the few perfect pieces of art that I think exists. I think we spent over an hour really sort of hammering that home. So I wanted to free myself from your religion. No, I want to free myself from the expectation of having to do something that sort of mars what she has done with that record, and rather celebrates her approach to calling up her songs in a way. Anyway, okay. So with that, I still begin with Beauty Queen and Horses because it goes back to like a Reindeer King for me. It's just one of those untouchable openers for me. The Leslie cabinet being turned on, the sort of way that we have to wait really patiently for any note of music to begin. It just feels so... I don't know. It's really the secret garden door is opening up in that song, and it's such an epic, beautiful. Beauty Queen is so stark and ominous, and then Horses is so. It's like a dark lullaby almost, and it's when we're really being told by her that we're dealing in a different language. Like this is a different world and a different language, and words don't mean on Boys for Pele what they mean out in the world. They mean something different. And Horses really sets that up with its imagery, with its use of language, with its rhyme scheme and its discordance, and the way she hits that Leslie cabinet and gives us that warbly. It's the only time that she does that on the record, that she uses Leslie cabinet to give us this shaky effect, right? It's like chill. It's like a chilly vibration. I just think it's really special and evokes. She had said that Horses is the horse from winter, like now that's gone ahead. And so I think that it makes a lot of sense when you sort of link it to that. Okay, so we go from Beauty Queen Horses to Caught a Light Sneeze. And from Caught a Light Sneeze, we go into Donut Song. And I had those following each other because it ends with Mr. St. John, just bring your son. And I love how then she has, even though it's son and son differently, but she has the, you told me last night that you were a son now with your very own devoted satellite. Happy for you, and I'm sure that I hate you. 2 sons too many able fires. You've been wasting my time. And when you think about it in relationship to Caught a Light Sneeze, especially when she would later do those band performances in 98, when she would incorporate that little bit of Hurt by 9 Inch Nails, Donut Song and Caught a Light Sneeze feel connected in that way. So we go from Donut Song into Father Lucifer, because you'll never gain weight from a donut hole. And we also have the girls that ate pizza and never gain weight in that layered bridge that is so epic. And I think that there's a real relationship between what she's saying in Father Lucifer to Donut Song. And there's also this celestial, like, weather space thing that is happening between the two songs. I also think that Caton's guitar work is complementary between the two. They call it the ha-ha guitar in Donut Song. But there is that sort of same kind of like... we don't talk about Caton quite enough, but his contributions to this album and the tour, that he was playing guitar that didn't sound like guitar. And I think that that's what is so special and so interesting built into the sound of those early albums, because they're adding, the guitars add atmosphere and character and voice, and really just complement, almost give more like interpretive weight to the language that is confusing or cryptic in these songs. So we go from there to another short song. So I sort of also separate them into little groups. So we go from Father Lucifer into the next section, which begins with Hungarian Wedding Song. And Hungarian Wedding Song goes into Professional Widow. And I think they have similar energy. I love Hungarian Wedding Song. It is so... that is a pounding, angry talk about words that don't mean anything. I mean, like rolling with a property. I don't know if she just misspoke or she is twisting words together, or if she just created language. And in some ways, it kind of is a precursor to IIE, because it's like that's a made up word or sound, and property is made up, and they both are, they're both accessing a feeling that she needs, like other words and sounds to get across. So it makes sense to go from Hungarian Wedding Song into Professional Widow. And from Professional Widow, we go from Just Like My Daddy into Little Amsterdam, Mama Got Shit. And there's similar bleakness and grit to those songs. They are the most violent songs on the record. And you know, we have Mother Mary at the end of Professional Widow as well, and then we have Mama being killed by that bullet, and we have the widow, and then we have the orphan in Little Amsterdam, and it's just I don't know, there's just something so dark and unsettling about those songs. I love them together. But and we go from Little Amsterdam into Beulah Land. Beulah Land after Little Amsterdam, if you haven't heard it, just makes sense. And I love Beulah Land. It was such a wonderful treat to get that in '98 and to know that that was a Pele song. And I love, of course, the choir, the gospel choir on there. And it was such an exciting thing to know that they had appeared on another song. And I'll give a spoiler ahead of time. I actually removed Way Down because I only wanted one gospel choir song, even though I love Way Down. I only wanted one. And so I've replaced it with Beulah Land. But I do love Way Down, but you won't hear it on mine. So we then go to the next section, which begins with The Fire Eater's Wife. And we go from Fire Eater's Wife, Gotta Find the Monkey Tree. We go into Marianne with Timmy and that purple monkey. And I also think I love that sort of to put a moment of just the harmonium organ on Pele. I'm kind of surprised that she didn't do that somewhere. Maybe Fire Eater's Wife would have been the place where she did it. It's curious that, you know, obviously I'm removing Beauty Queen from it because Beauty Queen already appears in the beginning, but I'm really curious to know if the two exist together when she finally gave it to us, or on that track, because she had maybe even contemplated Fire Eater's Wife appearing before Horses. Like maybe she was, you know, going to do one or the other. I don't know that for sure. It'd be something interesting to ask her someday. But Fire Eater's Wife into Marianne. To Marianne, we go to Tallulah. Because she's mourning this loss, and then to have I Don't Want to Lose Her in Tallulah feels like there's a similar yearning to hold on to someone special, to something important. And there's a desperation there as well. But they do it in two very different ways. There's more traditional wistfulness about Marianne, and then there is a funky, sexy joy to Tallulah that doesn't quite make total sense with the lyrics, but I love the contrast, right? Like I love that purposeful juxtaposition of the joy and the kind of grim, also violent lyrics there. And we go from Tallulah to Muhammad, My Friend, and those two felt right together as well because they both have biblical references. And we have Maryam weaving on, and then we have Muhammad, the girl back in Bethlehem. We go from there to the next section, which begins with Graveyard. And we go from Graveyard into the Fair Motor Maids of Japan. There's, well, actually, I'm going to say the whole section because I think that they all make sense together. Graveyard to the Fair Motor Maids of Japan, into Not the Red Baron, into Putting the Damage On. Because I think that section is, the death is not, it's not a literal one. And there's a saying goodbye in Graveyard, and singing One to Sleep. And I think that To the Fair Motor Maids of Japan also has that sort of lullaby-ish quality. The Plains That I Have Died On goes into Not the Red Baron, which of course, you know, has a plain imagery. And also the singing him One Last Little Sound, I think speaks both to Graveyard because she goes in to sing to that old man, right, to sing him to sleep now. So they feel connected. And then Putting the Damage On, which is just one of my all-time favorites. I mean, we'll eventually get to our top 25 that we did back in the day. Putting the Damage On is so interesting. And I think that anybody will relate to this if your heart's been broken by someone, yet there's something here that feels like such an appeal to him. Like you're still just so pretty. Like, you know, there's another woman now. Her pretty legs could use sun. He's gone to the mountaintop. You know, I'm trying not to move. It's just your ghost passing through. There's a light in your platoon. I've never seen a light move like yours can do to me. It's like, there's no option to get back together, but it feels like she's attempting to flatter this one who's gone, and say, or say, even if you don't hear this, even though you're hurting me, you're so pretty, you're so, I'm just like still so awed by you, despite the fact that you've hurt me in this way. You know what I mean? It's a very specific like generosity that we can sometimes have in this like delusion of heartbreak or something like that. I don't know. It's hard to explain, and just think that song is truly epic and truly gorgeous and really stunning. So we go into the next section, the last section, which begins with Mr. Zebra, because it feels like in Mr. Zebra there's a bit of a new kind of unraveling happening, and having to sort of get back out there. She's a good time fella. Like there's a kind of a broad quality to it. Like when I say broad, I don't mean like universal. I mean like she's a broad now, right? And that of course goes into the spring, in the springtime of his voodoo, with our angry snatch and our swiveling of that hip. And I also use the rookery ending to my voodoo, and it goes beautifully into Alamo. I think that those two together just complement each other so beautifully, because then I was over it, and we go into Alamo, and again, that's sort of like posturing of strength, but actually extreme heartbreak. And I will say, this may be controversial, I want the original one from the single, because I think that George Porter's bass that has been resurrected on Alamo and Sister Named Desire is a little too aggressive. It almost like messes up the melody for me. I don't quite, yeah, I can't quite go there. There's something intrusive about it that I don't quite love. So I'll just say that. Though I think his bass playing is incredible, and I think, but there's a reason why I think she turned it down on the single mix, and I think she just thought it'd be fun to give us what we didn't know was there. And I love when she does that. But Alamo, yeah.
What to say about that bass? Like, to me, that pairs really nicely with the girl lost her sway that day, because I feel like the bass is the sway. It's like when Tori taps into it.
I would say it's better served on, or Sister Named Desire is better served by that additional bass than Alamo is, just for me.
Yes.
I think there's some disagreement, and that's okay. But anyway, Alamo, we've already spoken about it. I second listening to Saker on songs of Tori Amos. We go from Alamo, somebody invent the telephone line, into Hey Jupiter. No one's picking up the phone. I also thought about the Dakota mix, but I kind of like it as its own thing, because I feel like she stepped away from the original version of Hey Jupiter almost from the start, because she so rarely played it solo on the piano. It was mostly on the harmonium, and it was an edited version of it. And then when she had the band finally perform it in 2002, it became the Dakota mix, and then everything since has been a variation on that. And I adore the ending with the I Go From Day to Day, I Know Where the Cupboards Are. It's one of my absolute favorite moments in Tori's catalog. It's one of my favorite things about anybody ever. It's so beautiful that I love that she re-recorded it. I love that it's a totally different thing. I love that it's used for the music video. It fits it so beautifully. But I want to respect that original version, which I think is, I think there's a reason that she doesn't do it in its entirety like that, because it's so naked. It's so, Dakota is painful too, obviously, but I think that, I don't know. I think it was also like a hint that she wanted to leave that sad place and have a band play with her. And also, I'm pretty sure that the Dakota program drums are the same ones from Sugar, which is also interesting. So you go back and listen. I think they're actually the same drum sample. Anyway, but we have Hey Jupiter, and then we end the record with Blood Roses. We are back on the street now. And I agree with you, Maddie, that I got rid of Sounds Terrible, but I removed Twinkle as well as Agent Orange. I never really connected to that. I understand its purpose on there, and I too love thinking about that Joel era, but it just didn't work on this version for me. But ending with Blood Roses, I think it's her punk harpsichord record, and there is something bleak about ending that way, I know, but I think it's also powerful, and there's a rebirth in Blood Roses. When you put it at the ending instead of up towards the beginning, it changes the context and the meaning of the song for me. And I think ending on that harpsichord note is important, and I think that Sometimes You're Nothing But Meat just feels like a real reckoning. It just feels like a really, really dark but necessary reckoning, and it's just such an aggressive song. but also so beautiful and so heartbreaking and so masterful. And I don't know. That's how mine ends. And I really like this. And I think it sounds really fabulous. And I've listened to it a bunch like this. And it was oddly, once I got into it, it was oddly easy to figure out once I knew what I was going for. And yeah.
You did a really good job of making connections from song to song thematically.
It's
that
there.
I appreciate.
It's there. Yeah.
And all of our playlists are very, very different, which I think is really great. Especially considering how daunting it was to dig into this album, because I think we all do agree that the sequencing as is the right way. And I think this might be the only album we agreed on as a group is that way. So that's kind of cool. But I actually can't wait to listen to both of your playlists, just to compare and contrast and to, listen to these iterations of the album that you've created that are going to be completely different from the one that I've been listening to. So I'm excited for that. That's the fun of this podcast is, now we have 3 new versions to listen to that are all going to be really unique and really cool and evoke different emotions and thoughts. So I really like both of you guys' playlists.
Guys, this was incredible. What an incredible season. I can't believe we did it. We worked through this.
Favorite moments of the album.
Okay, we can. I just want to compliment how incredible this season has been and how we did it. Of course, season 2, we must do a Why Can't Tori Read. We cannot let that girl go unaccounted for.
We have some ideas for season 2.
We have quite a bit.
We have some stuff that will feed the children. I think there probably will be a holiday episode as well. So
the break won't be and the break won't be super long. We're not going to stay gone for too long. We're going to take a very modest hiatus, but we have a lot of fun things in store.
Like a 98-99 situation.
Yes.
Yeah, basically. Yeah. All right, favorite moments. Kristen, you are ready. What is your favorite moment?
Okay, I have to go back to my favorite moment. Okay, I got a few. Donut. Happy for you that she can barely get out with disdain and pain.
I set a terrible precedent with Cactus. I'm sorry.
I know, but I've always
spell it.
Spell happy.
HABBIE.
We're such dorks. Go ahead.
And then that wasting has more power on that next line. I've never seen a light move like yours can do to me. It reminds me I've never seen blue. Threads that are golden don't break easily. And then the Marianne, won't you just hold down, like the delivery on that is just so like in the swelling of the orchestra in the back.
So good. I got chills when you said that.
I know. And then skinny legs could use sun is such like a petty
I know.
bit. I love it.
I love it so much.
I love it.
So you have 6 favorite moments.
I have more, but those are the ones that I'm going to talk
It
about.
is a record of I'm okay. It is a record of moments. It really is. I know we say that a lot, but it's true for Pele. It's true.
I want to know the bitch who says her skinny legs could use sun. I want to go to dinner with her. I want to talk about it.
Well, let's talk also about how hot Tori's legs are.
Yeah,
God.
she's
She's got great legs, and she's talking shit about some other bitch's legs, right? Let's just say it.
But we all know what it is when an ex is with somebody else, and it feels really good to point out something that we think is lacking and that we know we have. All right, Maddie, what are your 6 moments?
I mean, you're right. It's not possible to have one favorite moment.
No.
So I have a couple.
We can rattle them off. I know we can.
Okay. So a lyric from Voodoo, right there for a minute. I knew you so well. It reminds me of the mantras that we've talked about throughout the season. And it just, it reminds you that relationships can be really impermanent. And when you're in that moment and you know someone so well, that feeling is so good. But when that goes away, it's the most devastating feeling in the world. Relationships, friends, family, what have you. So that one to me really sticks out. And that's why I wanted to include both Rookery and regular Voodoo. Caudalite Sneeze, the way she yells the word hot after the spire is hot, that is like, whoa, you're not expecting it to be that punctuated. And I'm going to give you 2 more, but I could go on and on. The bridge of Father Lucifer is, I think, one of the most insane things she's ever composed. There's so much going on, yet it's all like controlled chaos. The bass within there, the horns within there, the 3 different vocals happening and different harmonies happening. It's really the work of somebody who was under the influence of drugs, but very, very, very genius. And probably for my last one is, if there is a way to find you, I will find you. I just think that's like, oof. It's
Wow.
it's mystical. It's mythological. Yeah, but I think every single song on this record has a moment that I am obsessed with. I mean, I could also just say all of Blood Roses, because I think that the writing of that song is just that good. From a writer's perspective, I think that might be her best written song. But anyway, those are some of the moments, but I responded to those the most out of all of these. So Joey?
Well, I co-sign all of those because they're all awesome. They're incredible. And I just want to say one thing. I think the reason why there are so many moments, and these moments are small, is because it goes back to what I was saying a little bit. And part of the reason why I was inspired to do my playlist like this is because I think there's a true lack of self-consciousness on this record. And I think that might be what she's a little like icked out by and doesn't want to think about, but there's truly a lack of self-consciousness. There's a real like live performance quality to the way she sings and the way she utters certain words. And we remiss if we leave out the fact that anybody listening knows this, but when Tori recorded the bulk of the record in the church in Ireland, Mark and Marcel built a box for her to play in, and all she had was the harpsichord keys and the piano keys, and she was in a tight little space, and she was kind of locked in. And I think that probably also contributed to the way she performed, because she was kind of looking at like just a wall in her face and couldn't see the body of the keyboards. And I think that it probably, there's probably like a healthy anxiety that came out because she was in this space. So my moments really quickly, in Horses, I Can't Go, You Said So. That is a perfect little moment. Call Light Sneeze, my favorite shout in that song is after the bridge, the final Call Light Sneeze. The Call Light Snez, that's the one. That's Snez. Spelled S-N-E A-H-Z-Z-Z. Call Light Snez. Donut song, I love the Too Many Able Fires. Yes, that yes is another, that's like a yes, right? Like a real like angry, like but also quiet at the same time. Incredible. Let's see, let me give maybe 2 more. Marianne also has some of my favorites. Just the She Could Outrun the Fastest Slug, the way she's drowned out by that. It's just so incredible. And then Putting the Damage On, basically everything from the bridge to the ending. But if I'm thinking about one specific moment, it's that To Me, But I've Got a Place to Go, I got a ticket to your late show, the way the horns swell. Just incredible. There could be a whole other episode about moments just from this record, but those are just a few of them. Epic.
All co-signed by me for sure. I mean, imagine beginning a song with the lyrics, "Tuna rubber, a little blubber in my igloo." I mean, come on. Who does that? Wild. Give me a fucking break.
Also, Kristen and I went to a college that had these shitty dorms called the Ravines that were literally on stilts in the ravine. So I didn't think about way down in that ravine, the deep ravine, when I passed by them.
Especially because they fell into the
They literally fell. They collapsed into the ravine.
They crawled into the deep ravine.
That's a separate story. Guys,
woo!
Chef's kiss. What an epic episode.
One closing thought I must put
Please.
on the recording before your child comes home, which is I really appreciate how collaborative Tori is with her fans, and that she she writes these songs and she gives us information, but she's also totally open to our interpretation. And I have a feeling that she would disagree with everything we've said on this podcast, but I think that she would respect us for taking her art seriously and it making such a lasting impact, and forming our relationships, but just also like coloring how we see the world. And that's why this is so fun. So thank you.
Thank you, Kristen Keys.
Thank you, Matthew.
Thanks, boys.
Thanks, everybody. We'll be back. Yeah. Follow us on Instagram. Follow us on YouTube. Listen to back episodes. We have a lot of them now. What is it?
14
episodes?
14th, yeah.
Woo, since February, right? So we did it at a decent pace. And I like to think we did these albums a lot of justice. There's always more to say about them, and we will say more in season 2 because we can't just let it be as is.
We can't, because we never shut up.
Okay. Love you
See
both.
you soon. Love you.
Love you guys. Bye.
You still look pretty to me, but I've got a place to go. I've got a ticket to your late show, but now I've got to worry, 'cause even still you're just so pretty when you're putting the damage. Yes, when you're putting the damage, you're just